Hello, I'm Pastor Sherman Bradley.
And I'm Pastor Sidell Bradley.
And this is day 7 of our adventure in Israel.
On day 7, we went to Hasar El Yahud, the Tower of the Jews, which is by the Jordan River. And if you know in the scripture, the Jordan River is the place where John the Baptist, Jesus' cousin, baptized him in Matthew 3. It's also the place that the Israelites crossed over the Jordan River in Joshua 3. And maybe you're familiar with the place where Elijah went up into the clouds in the chariot in 2 Kings 2. So this is a really, really kind of holy place. And in 1967, after the 6 Days War, it became occupied and owned and run by Israeli tourism. And so now a whole lot of people come there to be baptized in the Jordan River.
And we had the pleasure of watching a pastor, Michael, and his son, who was only 15, Joseph, who was baptized right there before our eyes. And it was a moment that we'll never forget. Needless to say, it's a moment that they won't forget. But to experience that and to recall what that place means to us in our faith was really special.
And it's very interesting because, we're from Ohio, and the Ohio River is kind of dirty.
You think?
But when we went to the Jordan, you have this idea, Jesus is baptized there, so that means the water has to be blue and clear. Not so. The water was pretty muddy. And then we were able to, you're able to go there and you're able to go in and take some samples. So Sherman took a sample of the Jordan River because one of our friends asked to receive a sample. So we were able to take it back home. And so this, idea that Jesus was here, was baptized here, began really, his ministry from here.
Yes. What was interesting about this location too is it was just literally a stone's throw from Jordan. We could literally look over. There were buoys in the water because you cannot go across. It's well protected, and just across the other side you could see where in Jordan they had places for people in Jordan to come up to the river as well.
It's also like a little bit southeast of Jericho. And you remember about Jericho when the battle was fought and they marched around the city and they gave up a shout and the walls of Jericho fell down. And so it's so interesting as pastors to go to these places that we preach about and actually see them. Now, as we were riding along on the bus, we saw a lot of places with a lot of palm trees. We would see shepherds with flocks of various kinds of animals. I saw a flock of camels. That was crazy. So this Holy Land experience really is something to be seen. So
now this location also, not just palm trees were present, but they're harvesting palm trees. Mm-hmm. So there are just fields and fields of palm trees. They call it the land of 1,000 palm trees, to give you a better example. But the rest of the locale is very desert-like, very rocky, very hilly, not the easiest place to navigate.
And it's interesting, we would see like goats going up these hills, and it reminds you of the scripture that talks about being like hinds feet on high places. Yes. You're seeing these goats ascend on the back of their heels all the way up these mountains. It is really a sight to see. So the next place that we went was a place called Masada, which actually means, that word means fortress. Maybe some of you might remember there was a movie about the story of Masada in 1981 with Peter O'Toole and Peter Strauss in it. And it's kind of the account of this this battle between Rome and this group of Jewish rebels who basically held their stand and against this army. They had gone in and they had taken out a garrison of Roman soldiers, and then they had fled to this place called Masada, which also held Herod's kingdom at that time during this war. And necessarily this people, they were just basically holding the fort down, and then they ended up losing this battle and committing suicide, burning up all of the houses, burning up everything, and 960 of them were killed.
Well, 960 of them took their own lives.
Yes.
Because they did not want to be captured by the Romans. But you have to see this locale for yourself, and there are some pictures that we're showing. It was a mighty fortress. It was a difficult place to actually navigate, to get up there. And there are trails that you can take, 2 of them if you want to walk it. But we actually took a huge cable car that housed about 86 people to go up, which is a little interesting because we were in there like sardines, and it's a journey to get up to the top of Masada.
So I'm not really a fan of heights. So when we were at the bottom and I looked up this mountain that we had to go up on this huge cable car with all of these people on it, and I'm looking at, are these cables strong enough? Are we gonna have some kind of, YouTube thing that's gonna be there that we fell off? And then there are people that are going up these trails. 2 trails that were there, one more steep than another. So some people were actually walking up this mountain. It's in the Judean desert.
Yes.
It's overlooking the Dead Sea. Yes. It's a high elevation. And so you saw this place where Herod's kingdom and his fortresses were. So you saw the quarries, and you saw the porticos. You see places where he would entertain guests. You saw he had a western palace. He had a northern palace, and you would see replicas of them because, at this point it's almost like all brick and caves and that kind of thing. You saw the places where they had storehouses for food and barracks for the soldiers. All of this on this super high mountain. And so, you're just trying to imagine how all of these, bricks and all this stuff, that all these supplies and all of this, how they irrigated the water systems up this mountain so that this king could have this entire palace there. It was fascinating. Only 2 women and 5 children survived this. Yeah. The name of them were the Sicarii. The Sicarii were the people that were fighting the Roman soldiers.
And this goes all the way back to 31 BC, I believe.
BCE, yes.
Now, so bringing it back to 2022, 2023, at the bottom there's this restaurant and a museum where there were a couple of videos that you could watch to learn more about the history of Masada and what actually took place. There are renderings and drawings of what it looked like, because once we got up there, it's just ruins. But we got a real clear visual picture of what that life looked like back during that time.
This is another place where we saw a lot of this kind of Byzantine mosaics.
Yes.
So in the palace areas, the courtyards where people were coming to visit, you see this really intricate stone mosaics.
It's still there.
Still there. It might not have been there in its full form, but they were like the ruins of it were there. And so Masada, was both scary and exciting and informative. You don't think about this vast land on top of a mountain that people were inhabiting. So next place we went was Qumran. And Qumran is an archaeological site in the West Bank, and it's most famous for the Dead Sea Scrolls, and other scrolls were found there. And so we went there. It was like a cavernous kind of place. Yes. It's interesting because some of these caves is like they have these places that look like there's eye sockets, like the caves are looking at you. It's a really interesting thing. So it was inhabited by a Jewish community of the late Second Temple period, which most scholars identify with a group that was called the Essenes, Essenes, which was a mystical kind of group of Jewish people. When we think about mystics in Christianity, you're thinking about people like the monks. So people who are setting them side to side. They have asceticism. That means they're kind of denying the pleasures of their flesh. They're hiding in rocks and caves, and they're worshiping God just together. So there was this group of Jewish people that were doing the same thing. And so this is these caves, and we saw this kind of like I guess they dug it out and made it like a museum, and you would see all of these scrolls that they had excavated in Qumran.
Yes, and there were all kinds of other artifacts that were there that they were using during that time as they lived amongst these caves. So we got another picture of just how they were navigating day-to-day life.
And some now are still settled there in the kibbutz, which is kind of a community of people. So there's settlements everywhere that we went, people living in all different kinds of terrains in all the different cities that we visited. And so then we went to the Dead Sea. At Kalia Beach, the Dead Sea. It was really interesting.
Yeah, it's literally, they have a sign that says, this is the lowest beach on earth. because geographically it sits low, below sea level, unlike any other place in the world. But it's also the Dead Sea. So if you know anything about the Dead Sea, you know that it's not some place you're just going to hop in and go swimming. It is filled with salt, so much so that you cannot sink. And so there were some that were braving, because it's not a normal beach, so there wasn't any sand. This is muddy rock that you had to really pay attention to try to walk on. And even once you got in the water, it didn't change. It wasn't as if there was some soft undercurrent underneath their surface. It was all rocks that now, I don't know this from experience.
And the water itself is dense.
It's extremely dense. Again, you cannot sink. You will only float once you get in. And that was some of the appeal for people to go in. But we didn't go in.
It's 9.6 times more salty than the ocean. So if anybody's ever been to the ocean and you get that salt in your eyes or salt in, they were like, do not get this salt in your eyes. Do not get it in your mouth. Now, we didn't go in. We just watched other people do it, because also the rocks, people were coming out of the Dead Sea with cuts and blood flowing. It was a little bit dangerous. So, we're like, okay, this is good. We're good.
We're close.
And then also, there's minerals in this Dead Sea. It's almost like a spa-like vibe when you go to the different places, the different stores, because people are literally putting this mud on their entire body, almost like, taking the toxins out of their body. So you're walking around, you see all these people like green and brown, walking around, and they go and they wash it off with these hoses that they have there. So it's not just a site for recreation, it's also a site for health and spas. So there were spas all around the area as you went into the...
Yes, so to get to the beach, you have to go through where there are several stores that are selling from this huge industry of all natural products from the sea salt for your body, for whether it's makeup or it's lotions, all kinds of things that you can buy, and then the paraphernalia that goes along with it. So this was a big deal there.
Yeah, there was food and everything there. And so that was also my favorite thing, was outside the Dead Sea, there was a camel ride. Oh. And I was excited because there was a camel at the Mount of Olives that I didn't get a chance to ride. But on this one, I got a chance to ride the camel outside of the Dead Sea area. And it was great, though it was short. I was so excited to be on a camel. It was a little bit interesting getting up. I thought I might have got thrown by the camel, but once I was up, it was a wonderful thing to have done, to say I've done. It's kind of like when you go down to the Caribbean and you swim with the dolphins, which we've also done. To go over here to the Middle East and to ride a camel was a wonderful experience. So those 4 things were the main things that we did. At this point, everybody's coming out of the ocean. They're still, needing to clean off. And so then we headed back to the hotel, and it was a great day.
It was a wonderful day.